Yes, defaultism, assuming everything in the world in some way, shape, or form is tied back to us USAians. Yeah, there's a lot of dumb things on the internet, and a lot of Americans are responsible for a lot of those dumb things on the internet. Sometimes it just feels like we're leading the pack when it comes to saying some of the most egregious, insane things. In fact, what I want you guys to do right now is let me know right now in the comments down below what one of the wildest things one of us Americans has said to you has been, and please don't hold back. It's been pretty brutal. But last video, we had a lot of interesting comments from you guys, and the first one that I read says, well, without the French, Dutch, and Spanish, you would still be British. Quid pro quo. And that comment is basically in direct response to something the Secretary of the United States said.
My advice to that unnamed low-level French politician would be to remind them that it's only because of the United States of America that the French are not speaking German right now.
That's pretty hilarious. Our next comment from one of you guys says, American, you have to be 21 to drink. German teenager laughs his ass off with his legal beer in hand. Yeah, the more I think about it, I don't understand why the drinking age is so high, and also why the age that you are allowed to smoke in the United States has also gone up. Because with those two major changes, you would also think that the age for gun ownership would also shoot up as well, and the age for people to own their own vehicle or drive a vehicle for their first time would also go up as well. But I don't know, maybe that makes too much sense. You guys let me know how you feel about that in the comments down below. Again, I thought that was always a little weird, a little strange. I'm like, okay, what's the logic behind the drinking age being so high? But our next comment from one of you guys also said, needing to be 21 to enjoy a good drink is beyond stupid, especially when you can own your own gun, drive a car, work, join the military, and smoke all before then. Here in Australia, you gotta be 18 to buy alcohol, but you can still drink as young as 13 as long as it's in a personal residence while under parental guardian supervision. For me, I was introduced to alcohol at 14, and Monkey Shoulder, a brand of single malt scotch, has been my poison of choice since. I'm 24 now, and I've only been drunk on 3 occasions, all of which were after I turned 18. And that's kind of one of the things I thought about as well. Again, like I mentioned before, we're able to join the military, we're able to own a vehicle, we're able to buy guns and all these things before the legal drinking age, right? All under 18 actually. So it's super, super insane. And then you flip around and have access to things that you would think would be a little more intense. So one thing I used to think growing up is I'm like, wait a minute, if you're able to properly get introduced to alcohol in your own domicile with your family and stuff like that, where you're able to, you know, drink a little bit with the fam, and then you'll kind of be able to successfully gauge what your limit is. Because what happens in the USA a lot of times is when people turn 21, they don't know their drinking limit. They've never drank a drip drop of alcohol in their lives. So they find out what their limit is at the bars for the first time, and they cause irreparable damage to their environment around them. Now, not everybody does this, but so many people do this that it's a problem, and it completely debunks the myth that, oh, like the lower drinking age is a problem, because clearly the drinking age being where it's at as well is also a problem. But anyways, our first post says, I don't know who this is, but LMAO. And I'm sure, just like everybody else, we are all curious as to what that comment is referring to, and here's the entirety of that post. At the top here it says, Julia in Delaware says boys in girls sports is a non-issue, except Julia is in, checks notes, Germany. Because of course, if you look at this image right here, it says Julia in DE, right? And DE in the United States would stand for Delaware. But of course, since the entire world is not the United States, it's obviously Deutschland. It says right here as well, account based in Germany. So it's a little strange that, you know, this individual up here, actually, you know what? Funnily enough, I made the same mistake a while back. A few years ago, you guys probably have seen a reaction of mine. I reacted to a video from the famous rock group Rammstein, and I made 2 big mistakes. It's probably one of my most disliked videos for 2 big reasons. A, I did not know how to pronounce Germany. I called Deutschland. It's called Deutschland. What the fuck is that? And I also did not know that Germany was called Deutschland in the first place. Did not know that. I was like, oh, okay, cool. I don't understand. If it's Germany, it's Germany. Like, why not just call it Germany and not Deutschland? It doesn't make any sense. I thought that in Deutschland, the primary language was Dutch. I was getting eaten alive in those comments, all right? So let's go ahead and take the attention off of me and check out these comments. And our first comment says, yes, DE is for Deutsche Republic of Delaware, commonly known as Delaware. Trolls. We love them. Genius response. I'm not gonna lie, for a while I did not know that Germany was identified by, DE for Deutschland or whatever, because I didn't know it was called Deutschland at all. I just thought it was Germany forever. I'm like, oh, cool, Germany. After I found out that Germany went by Deutschland, I was like, oh, okay. That means maybe every single European country has an alternate name. Even if your country doesn't. What's your alternate name for your country? Let me know in the comments down below. The funniest thing about this is that Kruse is also a German surname. I have one even better for you. When I was working at my prior job, we were looking at the roster of names for an attendance spreadsheet. In that roster of names, this individual's last name was Weissnicht. And I was like, that's a real name? And they're like, yeah, it's Weissnicht. And I'm like, no, it's Weissnicht, which means I don't know. I don't know. That's like naming your child user not found. And somebody just went with that. But this was an American guy with a German last name, so maybe somewhere down the line, I'm assuming some of his family had to be German. Please tell me they cut the shit out of her in the replies. And as you can see here, they absolutely fried her. The top of that thread says, you think they call it Germany in German? And then underneath that it says, do you think the website domain .de means from Delaware as well? And the comment underneath that says, DE means Deutschland, you fucking idiot. Underneath that, the next comment says, DE is also an abbreviation for Germany. And underneath that it says, Brandy, I love you, but DE isn't Delaware in this case. It's Deutschland, which... So let's take a look at the next post, shall we? OP asks about countries and immediately asks which state. At this point, I think people just be saying stuff because there is no way in the world this person didn't catch on to what they were doing. It's 2025. Nothing surprises me anymore. Let's go ahead and check out what that caption was referring to. It's from the r/ask Reddit thread, and it says, what surprisingly legal thing in your country would shock most foreigners? The top comment here says recreational marijuana and same-sex marriage, which... very valid, for sure. Very valid. Now, underneath that, somebody replies, not just somebody, the original poster replies, which state is it? And then underneath that, the person who made the initial comment responds by saying, Canada. Sir, you're the one that asked the question. You said which country? Which country, not which state. Which country? It's like you forgot what you wrote when you posted it. I genuinely wonder if some Americans think the US is the world and their states are the countries in it. I mean, the answer is undoubtedly yes, but I want to know how common it actually is. Well, that is what happens when you're not well traveled. I am about to do a video on that particular statement as well. So for the people who are watching the video up to this point, I need you to do me a favor. How would you define well-traveled? Because for a lot of people from the United States of America, we define well-traveled as being able to travel from one location to a different location, even if it is in your country of origin exclusively. Like for instance, if I traveled from California to Colorado to Florida to New York, all over the United States, I thought I would have been considered well-traveled. But from a lot of the responses I was getting from you guys, you were saying that well-traveled means actually getting outside of your continent, seeing different countries. You have to use different currency, engage with different cultures and stuff. Although America is a melting pot, so prepare to get a lot of those responses in the comments rebutting the, hey, you're not well-traveled statement. I'm just going to ask every American which Bundesland they're from in the future. Honestly, fair. The caption says USD is the only currency. Oh boy, we've seen this one before. The top of this post says, wait, what? Here, 32 gigabyte kits are like $300. How are you getting these under $250? You in Kentucky? And the response to that says, I'm in Cambridge, UK, and it's pound, not dollars. And the response to that says, I'm so confused. Cambridge is in the States, and I did not know that city has its own currency. And the response to that was, go to sleep. It's okay. Your American brain can't comprehend the United Kingdom. And underneath that it says, so that guy really thought there's one currency, USD, and one city named Cambridge. Wow. As an Asian, I could never. And underneath that it says 250 pounds is mental. Wonder how long this RAM situation's gonna go. Underneath that it says, yep, buddy, grateful that I built mine in March. So, American spotted in the comments section saying that, yeah, Cambridge only exists in the United States, and I did not know that Cambridge, being the only city worldwide named Cambridge, only place in the world worldwide named Cambridge, also has its own currency called the pound. What is the pound? Sometimes when I look at posts like these, it absolutely gives me a cranium ache, okay? But if you want to restore my sanity, feel free to go ahead and hit that like button and get this video to 5,000 likes. Oh my God. How do you even get this stupid? Very carefully. You have to do certain things to acquire this level of stupidity. I had a discussion with a taxi driver when I was heading back to Boston Airport after a work trip, something along the same lines. He was astonished that most of the cities in that area were named after cities in the UK, which in most cases were hundreds, if not thousands of years older. He just couldn't wrap his head around it and kept protesting that that could not be possible and that their cities came first. No arguing with stupid. Yeah, actually, I just had this happen at work. You realize at some point that people don't care about you being right. They care about them just saying shit. So sometimes you gotta just shut up and listen and let them be dumb. Now our next comment says, finally, one of them actually admits to being confused. Hey, you gotta give credit where credit's due. Our next post says, you don't need to take a flight to get to New York City. Listen, that right there? There's levels to dumbassery. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? Let's look at the post. What kills me is in this post, the commenter says one of the cheapest trips you can take, New York City. That person must have been rage baiting, because what do you mean? That trip is pretty pricey. To do activities in New York is to like sacrifice an arm, leg, and goat sacrifice, and then come back with a stomach bug because the quality of food is terrible. But the food does taste good. The quality of food and the taste of the food are two totally different things. It does taste good, it's just, you know, it'll rumble your tummy a little bit. Reminds me of the time US people criticized me for bragging about my wealth and being able to afford to travel by posting photos of Vancouver's mountains. I live in Vancouver. I took a public transportation to get to those mountains. It cost about $4. I also think that there's a common misconception, because I fell into this category for a long time when I was younger, right? I thought that every single European was filthy freaking rich, right? Because, you know, we would get exchange students from different European countries and all of them would be like, yes, I've traveled to Italy, I've traveled to France, I've traveled to Greece, I've traveled to... And I'm like, dang, bro, like, how did you have so much money to do this? Like, you probably have $30,000, $40,000, like, just freely available to spend at any moment's notice on a trip like that, because that's expensive. For like your average American to go travel to those places, that would be super crazy expensive, right? And I'm thinking too, like, you know, they travel to one location, come back, travel to another location, come back, and some of them did. But the fact of the matter is they're a lot closer to those locations, and throughout Europe, it's a lot cheaper to travel since proximity is quite close to those countries, whereas we have to fly across the ocean to get to you guys, so it's a little bit more pricey and whatnot. And then of course, getting our finances and vacation time in order to do a trip like that does cost an arm, leg, and goat sacrifice. So a little bit of it was projecting. So it's interesting to see this individual here having a similar experience to what I had growing up. So it's cheaper than my train to Paris for 40 euro. The more you know. It is not cheaper than your train to Paris. I know that was just a tongue-in-cheek thing, but just for the people watching this that are like, oh, it's cheaper? Trust me, because there are people like this in the world, you know what I mean? Like, we're making a video on it right now. USAians are prime suspects to things like this. Now, I'm not saying that we don't have other people throughout the world that say dumb things as well. I want to clear that up. There are dumb people literally everywhere. You'd be surprised. Again, we just happen to have a mass amount of them in one location. And confirm, as a New York sports fan who's in the UK, it is not the cheapest trip you can take. Yeah, unfortunately, I know for a fact that man's pockets are hurting. Okay, New York, that's one of the most expensive trips you can take in the United States, honestly. Now, is it worth it? Probably. You get to see so much at the sacrifice of your wallet, for sure. So be careful. Our next post is interesting, as it says, on a video of a girl making dishes from different countries. Oh boy, this one's gonna be painful, so buckle up. So this is a TikTok video that was paused, and the comment thread looks pretty interesting because the top comment here says, I'm from Georgia and I have never heard of this. And underneath that it says the country Georgia, and it has a ton of likes. So the initial individual was successfully ratioed. Underneath that, another comment says, LMAO, not the state, buddy. Underneath that, another comment says, notice how she says different food from different countries. Listen, if I do too many more of these posts and stuff, I'm pretty sure you guys are going to be thoroughly convinced that Americans can't read. Because again, there was another individual earlier in this video that posted asking about different laws and regulations from countries. And when somebody replied saying, oh, okay, this law or allowance would be real strange in my country, he said, which state? The original poster proceeded to say which state, even though the original poster was asking which country. It's like we don't read before we upload. So, yeah, I've done that. I've definitely done that. And as I look at these posts, I am reflecting on a lot of the things I've done that have not been too bright. Okay. Poor Georgia. Just can't catch a break. Yeah, I'm seeing that this is a very common thing. Georgia keeps taking the heat when it comes to Americans taking credit for Georgia exclusively just being in the United States and nowhere else in the world. And guess what? I was one of those people. I was one of those people too. A lot of people are like, oh yeah, you know, the country of Georgia. I'm like, Georgia's not a country, it's a state. And they're like, it's a country. Where do you think the state got its name from? Boy. And I did some research and I ate my words for breakfast, lunch, dinner, and I'm eating my words to this day. I'm not innocent, man. I'm not innocent. I'm just a guy at the end of the day. I'm just a guy. Just want to learn about the world. Imagine being from Georgia, the state, and being unaware of the fact that there is an entire country with the same name. Yeah, 100%. There's so many people like that. There are so many people like that. And it's not just exclusive to Georgia. There are plenty of other places in the United States named after countries throughout Europe. And people think that their location in the United States is the only location with said name. So it's insane. Our next comment says, I guess it kind of makes sense that they assumed it was about Georgia, the state, not the country. For some reason, many Americans think that states are like separate countries. They think they're all so culturally different and stuff like that. I remember there was a person saying that the cultural difference between state A and B, I don't remember which ones they mentioned, was bigger than between France and one of the Balkan countries. Again, I don't remember which one, but it was a Balkan country for sure. Insane. Oh boy. Oh boy. Yeah. So again, there's this other online debate and it's between Americans and Europeans, and Americans are like, we have more culture, and Europeans are like, literally have more cultures. But in one sense, right, the United States it's a melting pot. It has all kinds of cultures combined, but the overarching American culture is uniform throughout everywhere you go. There's some nuances and some differences depending on what state you go to, what town you go to, things like that, but not so different that you're speaking an entirely different language and abiding by a different set of laws and using different currency and things like that. You know, let's go ahead and get into this next post. Boom. The caption says, video shows cops in Spain. US Redditor wonders why people are talking about cops in Spain. This will be very interesting. I can only imagine the amount of excruciating pain our craniums are going to face when we dive into this post. So here we see an image of the Spanish police getting in this lady's face, or vice versa. And the top of this says, bro came to control the protest, but now he's controlling his own heart. I think this was a protest where the husband's wife showed up and she was yelling at him, I guess, and that like it went mega viral or whatever. So the next part of this post actually says, cops in Spain, what the fuck are you talking about? Hey, I got something to talk about. Release the Epstein files. And then underneath that, the response is, have you even watch the video you're commenting on? The cop's back says Policia, and he has the Spanish flag on it. That means it's a police officer in Spain. Sure, release the files. Now back to how you have no idea what you're even talking about. I mean, it's not like the United States has the only set of cops in the entire world. I mean, every country for the most part has some sort of law enforcement. That shouldn't be a disputable statement. Clearly, Spain doesn't have cops. It's a US only thing. I knew that's where this was gonna go, man. Good Lord. There's a line between US defaultism and mental illness. With the US these days, it's getting harder and harder to tell where that is. Well, we definitely blurred the line there a little bit. A lot of bit, unfortunately. And it's only getting worse, it seems, in these posts. Our next comment says, for anyone curious about the entire thread, I've quickly paraphrased it for you. It's wholesome that they're a married couple. The response is cops beat their wives in Florida. And the response to that is the couple in this video is in Spain though. And the reply to that was, so what? They're in Spain. Do you want Putin to invade Ukraine? Release the Epstein files. Which side are you on? I'm going to tell my therapist how sick you people are. And this post actually is incredibly familiar to me because I did see this earlier this year. There was a protest happening in Spain, and it turned out that the husband's wife showed up and got in his face and stuff. And they're like, oh, well, this is wholesome because he's probably going to go home after this whole encounter in XYZ, blah, blah, blah. And the jokey jokes were a little on the dark side. You can go ahead and look that up yourself. Anyways, our next post says, thinking American English is proper English. I can only imagine that this post is alluding to the fact that this individual thinks that American English is literally the only English people should be speaking, or speak in general. So here we have a TikToker, and the top reply underneath that TikToker's video says, my man could knit that shit for £0. Underneath that it says, and she can even give you a kiss and love. And underneath that it says, please type normally. I know for a British person who has never taught proper English, that may be difficult, but please try your best. Underneath that it says, mate, you think English is American language? What I find hilarious is a lot of these posts are Americans interjecting in conversations that have nothing to do with them. Not just in this video, but in general, right? Like it'll be two people from other countries like talking amongst themselves in American. And here comes an American. Hey, what are you all talking about? Doesn't matter. Anyways, enough about me, more about me. Oh my God. And it's not even something intelligent. It's literally mind-boggling levels of dumbassery. Like if you're going to interrupt somebody when they're talking amongst themselves, at least have something constructive to say. My only issue is the font and not committing to typing shit in full. Yeah, I did notice that. The font was burning a hole in my scalp. I hate font like that. I don't even know how you get your phone to create a font type like that for like different platforms and stuff, nor do I want to know how that happened. That font is a war crime. I'm glad we all agree, because good Lord, I was reading that and I'm like, good God. Our next comment says, I'm beginning to get the impression that most English speakers have some grasp of American English, but Americans who have internet access seem to think any other written English dialect isn't proper American English. This whole language thing is getting unnecessarily complicated, right? For absolutely no reason. Anyways, our next post is pretty interesting, as the caption says, shit Americans say, or just some unreal defaultism. And again, brace yourselves. This one's going to be a wild ride. This was a thread from a TikTok video, and the top of it says, Castillo's a legend. Underneath that, the response says, we would have heard of him in America if he was. Underneath that, it says, USA main character syndrome. Underneath that, it says, legend should be a term used for people known in more than one country, LOL. Underneath that, it says, he's known in the UK, and that's 4, laughing face. Underneath that, it says, okay, America is still the wealthiest country in the world. A legend of an entertainer should be known there. Entertainers from other countries move there to continue to grow. That is an insane statement, because I think most Americans think that if the celebrity or artist does not come from the United States or does not migrate to the United States, then they have literally zero success, when literally in every country they have their own set of celebrities that haven't stepped foot in the United States. They might have had business dealings with the United States, but there are so many massive celebrities that most Americans don't know about that make billions and billions of dollars in their respective countries. That's just kind of how that goes. I think at the end of the day, a little research goes a long way, and I've probably sound like a broken record at this point, but it's true. People just refuse to open up their phones, do a little Google search, and look at like the facts for themselves, because I think maybe sounding dumb's the new trend or some shit. So to summarize, legend should be known in more than one country, but it is. That person is known in a lot of countries. Well, it's not known in the US, so it doesn't count. Yeah. We got a big case of US defaultism and shit Americans say. And to think this is not the first time I've seen this kind of double down is sad. Yeah, not my first time seeing it as well. I've actually done this myself as well. I'm like, oh, well, if they didn't make it to the United States, then obviously they're not that big, right? Like, no, they are by definition very, very big in their country. They're popular, they're wealthy, all that good stuff. Celebrities don't start and end in the United States. We do have a lot of them, and we have a lot of successful celebrities and whatnot, but there are also a lot of celebrities and successful people all over the world. That's kind of just how that works. In response to richest country in the world, underneath that it says, okay, now subtract your national debt. Hey, presto, the US is now the poorest country in the world, LOL. By debt to GDP ratio, the US is in the top 10 highest debt countries. If you strip all the countries that are either really tiny or currently undergoing severe political and military economic issues that skew the results, the US is third only to Japan and Greece. In terms of real numbers, though, both the GDP and the debt of the United States is magnitudes higher than either of those countries. So the end result is that the US is over 7.6 trillion in the red. In other words, the US owes more money than the nominal GDP of every country in the world besides China. Arbitrary metric is arbitrary. Who knew? Yeah, I was thinking about that. I'm like, wait a minute. If we took our debt and subtracted it from like what we have going on in the United States right now, we would be absolutely fried. But from what I've been told, a lot of countries, most countries operate in a deficit, right? A lot of countries have debt, maybe not on the same scale that the United States has, but they all have debt. Everybody owes everybody something. So I guess the way to work around that is through international trade, bargaining, and things of the nature and stuff like that. That's definitely an interesting take, a nice slice of reality, because I've always been worried about that. I'm like, I feel like our debt has gotten significantly worse. I remember in high school, our debt was when I was in high school, the national debt was 19 trillion. And I thought, wow, that is incredibly high. And now we're literally double that. But they'll have no problem saying they're celebrities that only they know are legends. Yeah, kind of like we say World Series when it's exclusive to just the United States when it comes to sports. Anyways, our next post says, why not just use your US passport? Okay, so apparently we're assuming everybody in the entire world has a US passport. Oy, oy, oy. So this post comes from r/passport. It says, dual citizen passport advice. Underneath it, it says, I traveled to China on my British passport due to the no visa requirements and headed to Singapore using my Irish passport. I'm returning back to Australia, but my visa is attached to the British passport. What should I do? Does it matter I exit Singapore on a British passport? And of course, there was a response to this, and the response was just show them your American passport. Obviously, -5 downvotes because what the fruck? Underneath that, it says, okay, because we all have one, right? r/US defaultism. And the original poster is like, what? Yeah, dude. What are you talking about? Not everybody has a US passport. I digress. Let's go ahead and check out these comments because I'm very eager to see what y'all had to say. I don't understand what showing a US passport would even do in this situation. If the original poster had one, it doesn't even solve the problem. Yeah, I think the person who commented that was basically alluding to the fact that the US passport is the end all be all key to all of your travel problems. If you just show your US passport, then all of your traveling problems mystically go away because that is one of the perks of having a US passport. We know that that's not the case. So much to unpack here. Original poster literally states they are a dual citizen, mentions 2 passports. So thinking that they have any more passports is wild, assuming an American of all passports. Thinking an American passport would be more useful than the UK passport they have their Australian visa attached to. Yeah, that comment from the American that was like, just use your US passport was pretty tone deaf. It was ignorant. It was super ignorant. Wasn't even paying attention to what the context of the conversation was in the first place. I think he just saw a delusional opportunity to interject and just say something about the United States and said, but the US passport, use your US passport. Like the person had it or something, even though the person said they only had 2 and they listed the 2 passports they had. Like reading is fundamental. Again, I swear to God, these videos are going to make y'all think that Americans can't read. We can read, I promise. We definitely can read. It's just we have some interesting boneheads, okay, that just don't know how to connect the damn dots. Didn't you know that all Irish people are American? Irish people from Ireland aren't Irish. They're Irish. Only Americans can be truly Irish. I swear to God, people really think like that. People really think like that for real. And it's scary. Like, are you serious? Tell me the education system failed you without telling me the education system failed you. Our next post is interesting as it says, Southerners in the context of the UK means people from the US South. Now, especially since I've been living out here in Korea for a long time, I've seen this conversation pop up many times in conversations with people from all over the world and Americans. Okay, so a lot of times when you have Americans from the deep South in the United States, they'll just be like out of context. Yeah, where am I from? I'm from the deep South. And they're like, the deep South of what? The Deep South. You know what the Deep South is. Like, well, the Deep South of the UK would be different than the Deep South of Germany, which would be different from the Deep South of Japan, which would be different from the Deep South of Korea. Boom. Now, this is all under a random facts in the world's post. The top caption on this post says a Southerner's view of the UK and Ireland. And of course, if you scroll over, there is another part to this because there were comments, right, in the comment section, and it says Southerners don't think about the UK at all. And underneath that, it says, when you are in England, the South refers to the part of the country that London is in. It doesn't mean Southern US. And of course, this conversation does not end there, as the next response says, meanwhile, me in South Carolina, they're giving us too much credit. I know the difference between nice rocks and not nice ones. Don't know what that had to do with anything, but the next comment says, many Southern families have Scot-Irish roots. We would recognize Scotland. And then underneath that, it says Southern England or the American South. I can't keep saying the same thing over and over again, so we're just gonna go ahead and hop directly into these comments. The first comment says, Scottish, not Scots. It's Scott, not Scott with two T's. Scott with two T's is a name. Unfortunately, not many people know that in the United States of America, but I appreciate the lesson because that mistake has been made more times than you'll know. How? How do you misunderstand that? How? Well, when you insist on being right all the time and absolutely refuse to do your research, that's what happens. That's the end result, unfortunately, and we have a lot of that going on. So, yeah, it's a real wonky shepherd's pie of problems, okay? The South doesn't exist outside the U.S., apparently. Apparently not. Apparently not. But anyways, we have another post to get into because I'm telling you, these posts only get more and more diabolical. And if you guys have any stories of your own, let me know in the comments down below because this can't be it, right? If this is what we're seeing on this level, imagine what's happening behind the scenes. Everyone says dates this way. Ah, yes, the classic date format debacle. Let's see what it manifests to be this time. So this post was pretty based, as it says, countries that use the year, month, date format. And it shows on this map here, Lithuania, Hungary, Mongolia, China, South Korea, Japan, Taiwan, North Korea. And then if you look again, there's another part of this post here with the comment section. And the top comment here says, otherwise known as the least ambiguous way to represent a date. It's frankly criminal that some put the month first, absolutely poisoning the potential for ambiguity of all of the countries that do the somewhat sensible day, month, year. And then underneath that, it says, yeah, but everyone speaks month, date for the most part. Nobody ever says, hey, do you want to meet up on the 12th of January? And underneath that, the response to that was the 4th of July. And underneath that, the other response was, that's a holiday. Another name for Independence Day when talking about the date outside of the context of the holiday, we say July 4th. I'm telling you, willful ignorance is stupidity. The person that was saying, oh yeah, man, like who says the 12th of January? Literally everybody. Even people in the United States use that. Like they'll be like, oh yeah, I'll see you on the 5th of this month, or I'll see you on the blah, blah, blah of March or whatever, on the 3rd of March or the blah, blah, blah of March. And they say it the other way around too in the United States, but they also say it the way that this individual is saying nobody says it, like, you know what I mean? Like, what? That's why it had so many dislikes. But anyways, the comments tore this man apart, as our first comment says. That guy is also ignoring that English isn't the only language. In my language, no one says the month first. It's just based on how the language is structured, what country you're in, and how everything is structured basically, right? It kind of dictates how the date is displayed. Like in Korea, I'm in Korea right now, it's year, month, day, which makes a lot of sense. Now, it was very confusing for me at first, but then looking at it, I'm like, oh, okay, this does make a lot of sense. You know, biggest number to smallest number makes sense. Biggest denomination to smallest denomination. You know what irritates me the most about it? When it's used in long form in text. November 25th, 2025 looks so messy and no one can convince me otherwise. And it pisses me off because some media outlets in Australia use it. For what reason? Why would you want to make the editorial decision to use the least efficient date format? I'm guessing for the sole purpose of driving user engagement, because people would be pretty upset and angry and borderline on the verge of typing away their feelings into oblivion, rightfully so, and maybe generate more viewers. I don't know. Bottom line is that editorial decision was very bad. Undeniably so. The crazy part is their argument is completely flawed because they assume everyone says the date as month day when spoken, but from my experience, it's said day of month where I live because the date is written day, month, year. So it seems the only reason they speak in month day is simply because that's how the date is written. So their argument for why they use month, day, year format is the same argument for why they say month, day. They serve as the reasoning for each other, which is ridiculous. That's like saying the color orange is called orange because of the fruit that is the same color, and then saying the fruit orange gets its name from the color of the fruit orange. It's quite idiotic. I'm not gonna lie, my last brain cell on life support almost had a seizure, so good, googly moogly. That was a very accurate comment, but as I was reading that, I'm like, oh my God. Good point, very good point, but you almost fried my own American brain with that comment. That was a little too logical, all right? You're gonna have to hold back a little bit. All right, our final post. Gotta make this one count. 40% of households have a gun. Dang. If 40% of households worldwide have a gun, whoa, whoa, whoa. I feel like there would be all kinds of different problems if that was the case. Boom. So it says right here, basically no one has a rifle. 40% of households have a gun, and given that rifles are typically easier to get than handguns, one can safely assume that the vast majority includes a rifle. And that's definitely a defaulting statement because, I mean, the context, like, bruh, like maybe like elaborating a tiny bit would have helped a bit. And there was a URL underneath what they said, so maybe that could be the context. But the comment section had some other things to say. As our first comment says, I'm 52, and the only time I've seen a gun, it was worn by a cop in the holster. And that's how I generally used to think guns were carried and displayed, by like law enforcement, not just the regular common folk, you know. America is very interesting. It's very interesting. It has, you know, we can own guns and things like that. And a lot of times the people who shouldn't have them. So very interesting debacle. Everyone and their moms packing around here. That's a nice summary of the United States. Our next comment says, technically correct. Only Americans live in houses. The rest of us obviously live in caves or huts. And with that being said, let me know what you guys think of this video. What's the wildest thing one of us Americans have said to you guys? What's the wildest thing I've said to you guys? Thank you guys so much for the support on these videos. It really means a lot. We're on the road to 1 million subscribers. Finally, it's been way too long. If you guys want to show some support and catch me live on twitch.tv/JamesBrayGang, link is in the description down below.